At precisely 8:43 a.m., Danica Ellison strode into Chicago O'Hare's Terminal 2 with the kind of quiet authority that didn't beg for attention, it commanded it. She wasn't flashy. There were no designer initials stamped on her leather tote, no entourage trailing behind her. Just a navy blue suit tailored to perfection, a gold watch ticking steadily on her wrist, and a presence that radiated control. But when she reached the first-class check-in desk for Horizon Air's 9:15 a.m. flight to Seattle, the welcome she received couldn't have been colder if she'd walked into a meat locker. The gate agent, Tyler Grayson, didn't even look up at first. Wiry frame, crooked badge, tie barely hanging onto his collar. He was the kind of employee you could tell stopped caring 2 years ago. "Boarding pass," he mumbled, without making eye contact. Danica handed it over, her name, Danica Ellison, clearly printed in bold capital letters, Seat 2A, First Class. Confirmed. Tyler scanned it, then scanned again. His brow furrowed, not in confusion, but in quiet dismissal. With a lazy flick of his wrist, he tossed the pass back across the counter like it was junk mail. "You're not in the system," he said, voice sharp with indifference. "Maybe you meant economy. That line's over there." Danica didn't raise her voice. She didn't blink. "Check again," she said, cool and steady. "It's there." Tyler smirked. That smug, familiar smirk that black professionals know all too well. The kind that says, "You don't belong here." He didn't check again. He dismissed her with a thumb jerk toward the snaking, crowded general boarding line and turned his attention to the next person in line, a white man in a golf polo who got a cheerful, "Good morning, sir." Danica planted her feet, voice dropping low and taut. "I'm not moving." "That's my ticket, paid, confirmed. Look again." What happened next was not an honest mistake. It was a decision made with bias, indifference, and a complete failure to treat her with basic dignity. Another agent joined in, backing Tyler without question, and within minutes, Danica, a high-profile CEO with more patents to her name than either of them could probably count, was being threatened with removal. The implication was clear. Because she didn't fit the image of a first-class passenger in their minds, she must be a fraud. This wasn't about a computer glitch. It wasn't about a misplaced ticket or a system error. It was about judgment. About the way certain people are too often prejudged at first glance and forced to defend their presence in spaces they've earned the right to occupy. It was about how quickly confidence is mistaken for arrogance when it shows up in black skin and a woman dressed sharply but quietly, unwilling to shrink herself to ease someone else's discomfort. Danica didn't escalate, she executed. She made one phone call, and in the minutes that followed, the system melted down, managers scrambled, and the truth surfaced. But in that initial moment, before the scramble, before the apologies, there was a decision to doubt her. And it was that decision, that instinct to exclude, that speaks volumes more than any software error ever could. Danica Ellison didn't need to raise her voice to command a room. Her power wasn't loud, it was precise, practiced, and impossible to ignore. As Tyler Grayson dismissed her ticket with a flick of his wrist and a condescending smirk, Danica didn't flinch. She didn't plead or stumble through explanations like someone who had something to prove. She simply stood her ground, chin slightly lifted, shoulders squared, gaze unwavering. She was 42 years old, CEO of Jackson Dynamics, a woman who had turned 3 bankrupt startups into billion-dollar companies before most of her critics had finished college. And in that moment, as 2 Horizon Air agents tried to push her aside, she embodied the kind of poised strength that makes lesser people panic. When Tyler threatened to call security, Danica's voice dropped into a steady, calm hum, so low it cut through the buzz of the terminal like a blade through silk. "I'm not moving," she said. "This is my ticket. First class, paid, confirmed. Look again." She didn't blink as Lindsay Carter, the second agent, marched over like backup, arms crossed and eyes already scanning Danica like a threat. Danica didn't back down. She reached into her phone, pulled up the confirmation email with the Horizon Air logo, Seat 2A, and held it out like a final warning. "Explain this," she said, not asking but demanding. They refused. Tyler's laugh was short and ugly. Lindsay's fingers hovered over the radio on her belt. And still, Danica did not move. She didn't argue. She didn't panic. Instead, she stepped forward, slowly and deliberately, her boots clicking softly on the linoleum, and then she made the call. Not to a customer service line, not to some nameless manager. She called Marcus Reed, her chief operating officer, her trusted right hand and the man who understood exactly how dangerous Danica's calm could be. Horizon Air, O'Hare Gate Denial. Handle it. That was all she said. One sentence. Then she ended the call and stared at Tyler like he was a child who'd made the worst mistake of his life. The atmosphere shifted. Tyler's smirk faltered. Lindsay stepped back half an inch. The computer screen began to glitch. The agent started to sweat. Danica hadn't raised a hand. She hadn't even raised her voice, but the air changed around her. Thicker, heavier, as if the entire terminal could feel what was coming. Passengers began to murmur. Phones were pulled out. Even the gate's PA system paused. And yet, Danica remained still. Her leather tote rested at her feet like a soldier's gear, her spine perfectly straight. She didn't speak again because she didn't have to. Her presence was the statement. There's a kind of power that doesn't need volume to be heard, a kind that doesn't ask for attention but seizes it with undeniable authority. Danica embodied that. Her confidence wasn't just professional, it was personal. It had been forged over years of being underestimated, ignored, and tested, and she had long ago decided she would never apologize for taking up space she'd earned. She didn't demand respect, she expected it, and when it wasn't given, she didn't lash out. She let the facts and her composure burn holes through every assumption in the room. What began as a smug dismissal quickly spiraled into a full-scale breakdown. As Danica Ellison stood unwavering at the check-in counter, the air around Gate 14 shifted from passive indifference to mounting tension. Tyler Grayson's fingers hammered the keyboard harder, the terminal flickering with lagging screens and flashing red errors. Invalid entry, the system spat over and over again, no matter how many times he re-entered her ticket number. Behind him, Lindsay Carter's radio crackled, first softly, then with sharp static bites, as she pressed it to her ear, her confident stance unraveling with each passing second. A voice on the other end hissed something urgent and her expression turned from cocky to confused. Danica didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Her silence was thunderous. She remained exactly where she was, arms at her sides, eyes locked on every twitch of Tyler's fingers. It wasn't rage that filled her. It was clarity. They were wrong, and now the system that backed their arrogance was betraying them, one glitch at a time. Tyler swore under his breath, yanking at his tie like it was suddenly choking him. The line behind Danica grew restless. A man in a suit tapped his watch, muttering. A mother rocked her stroller, whispering, "This is ridiculous," as the energy in the terminal turned electric. Then came the voice over the PA system, sharp and crackling. "Flight 214 to Seattle, boarding paused. Stand by for updates." The room gasped. First class was frozen. The very flight Danica had been denied was now delayed because of her presence alone. And still, she said nothing. The moment cracked wide open when Greg Holtz, the gate supervisor, came barreling through the crowd. His Horizon Air blazer was askew, his forehead bouncing against his chest as he stumbled to the counter. His eyes darted straight to Danica. "Ms. Ellison," he stammered, breathless. "I'm so sorry. There's been a terrible system error. You're cleared. We're fixing it now." But Danica's gaze didn't soften. "Fixing what exactly?" she asked, her voice cold and precise. "Why was I flagged in the first place?" Greg faltered, fumbling for an explanation. It's a system flag. I don't know. Yet. I've made calls to corporate. It's being looked into." "Not good enough," she snapped. "You flagged me, not the ticket, not the time. Me. Your agents didn't see a glitch. They saw someone they assumed didn't belong. That's what needs fixing." The terminal fell into silence. Passengers stopped whispering. Even the crying toddler grew quiet. Tyler's hands dropped from the keyboard, his face pale. Lindsay stared at the floor. Danica's presence had taken down more than a flight. It had revealed a fault line in the system itself. Behind the red error messages and malfunctioning scanners was a deeper flaw. Assumption, judgment, the kind of everyday bias that hides behind company policies and half-hearted apologies. Greg's radio buzzed again, this time loud enough for all to hear. Danica Ellison, CEO. VIP status confirmed. Agents failed protocol. Reinstate immediately. It was corporate. The truth was out. The mistake wasn't hers, it was theirs. Loud, public, and undeniable. As Greg begged her to proceed, Danica didn't move right away. She let it sink in. Let everyone feel the weight of what had just been exposed. Danica Ellison didn't let relief wash over her when the truth came out. Because relief wasn't the point. She hadn't fought to be let through or to simply be proven right. She stood there, not for an apology, but for accountability. As Greg Holtz fumbled through his apology, his voice brittle, his shirt damp with sweat, Danica's expression remained unreadable. She wasn't angry. She was calculating. "You're cleared," Greg repeated, his eyes wide, pleading. "We're reinstating your ticket." First class, of course, and top priority. But Danica didn't move. Her arms remained folded, her gold watch ticking in metronomic rhythm. "No," she said firmly. "You don't get to rush past this. Not until we talk about why your people looked at me and decided I didn't belong." The counter fell dead silent. Tyler Grayson stood stiff, hands shoved in his pockets, eyes glued to the floor. Lindsay Carter's crossed arms were gone, replaced by fingers gripping the edge of the counter like she needed it to hold herself up. The smirks, the assumptions, the casual disregard, all of it had crumbled under the weight of consequence. Danica didn't scream. She didn't need to. Her voice had already bent the room. Now she was here to shape the response. Greg sputtered, "We're investigating it. The system glitched." "Don't blame the system," Danica cut in, her tone sharp as broken glass. "The system didn't roll its eyes at me. The system didn't smirk or wave me off like a fraud. Your people did that. So now you fix them." She turned slightly, not to leave, but to signal she was not finished. "Those two," she said, pointing a calm, unshaking hand at Tyler and Lindsay, "don't touch another passenger until they learn what respect looks like. Make it stick." Greg nodded rapidly, already pulling out a notepad like it might somehow protect him from her scrutiny. "Yes, ma'am. They'll be pulled off the gate immediately. Retraining. Disciplinary action. Full audit on the flagging system. You have my word." "You'll send me that in writing," Danica replied. "Along with the names of whoever oversees frontline training. I'll be reviewing your updated procedures." Behind her, a man with a suitcase whispered, "That's how you do it." Someone else clapped quietly. But Danica wasn't looking for applause. She grabbed her tote, slung it over her shoulder with graceful precision, then turned to the gate. Greg stepped forward instinctively. "May I escort you on board?" Danica stopped, turned slowly, and with an edge colder than the jet bridge's steel rails said, "No. You don't get to escort me anywhere. Not until you know why I was stopped in the first place." She boarded without looking back. By noon, Tyler had punched out early, throwing his badge into his locker and muttering about overblown nonsense. Lindsay sat in silence, locked into a 6 a.m. retraining she couldn't dodge. Greg sent an email that evening. Subdued, deferential. "Miss Ellison, agents disciplined, full flag audit underway. Your comments included in the new training module. Thank you for holding us accountable." Danica didn't need to respond. She'd said what needed saying, and more importantly, she made sure it wouldn't be forgotten, not by the staff, not by the system, and not by the passengers who watched the entire terminal bend to a woman who never raised her voice, but shook the ground under their feet. In a world that often rewards noise and overlooks quiet strength, Danica Ellison's story is a powerful reminder that dignity, self-respect, and composure still carry weight, perhaps more than ever. She didn't raise her voice or cause a public scene. Instead, she stood firm, demanded fairness, and held people accountable without sacrificing her grace. The lesson here is timeless. Never allow others to define your worth based on their assumptions. Whether you're standing in an airport, a boardroom, or simply navigating everyday life, there will always be moments when you're underestimated or dismissed. In those moments, your response, grounded in truth, clarity, and unwavering self-respect, can speak louder than any outburst ever could. This story also serves as a reminder that accountability matters, not just for those in power but for all of us. Systems fail when people stop paying attention, and often it's not the policies that are broken, it's the people enforcing them without care or compassion. Especially for those of us with years of life experience, this is a call to stay alert, to speak up when needed, and to support those who do so with courage. Danica didn't walk away angry. She walked away empowered, and left behind a standard others will be forced to rise to. That's not just a victory, that's leadership in its most authentic form.